wanted to tell you about some optimistic news down south. Miami-Dade County is a large producer of treated wastewater, and with the ocean outfall legislation, they've got motivation to find ways to reuse that water, and FPL has been interested in finding ways to integrate that reclaimed water into our operations in Miami-Dade County, namely at Turkey Point. We've been in the last 15 to 20 years, we've been actively moving towards reclaim where it's available and where it can be dependably delivered into our system for cooling water. We've looked at different approaches beyond cooling in terms of environmental restoration. We have a lot of land areas, we have mitigation banks, we have great interest in making sure that our stewardship of the environment remains strong. It is our backyard too. So Turkey Point, down to the southeast corner of Miami-Dade County, is a large, say maybe 20,000 acres of property between Biscayne Bay and Everglades National Park, just north of the Keys. So we've got an interesting place in the universe, and we have a lot of different opportunities to use reclaim down there. We just recently, I think I came here last year to tell people we were exploring opportunities with Miami-Dade County. In the spring of this year, the Board of County Commissioners approved a joint participation agreement, and we are underway actively looking at technologies and applications. And I'll just tell you a little bit about that. Just as a 101 for power generation, there's generally 3 different water loops, a primary cycle and a secondary cycle to produce power. And that third cycle, the tertiary cycle, is where we depend on a large volume of water to help us cool the system. Largely in history that, all the first power plants that FPL created in Florida were on the coast. We eventually moved inland under the Clean Water Act and other environmental regulations. Didn't want us using that once through as thermal discharge can upset seagrass and other things, so we moved to large cooling ponds and cooling canals and reservoirs. And that was a great solution in the 1970s, but as time and technology has moved on, we've moved to forced draft cooling towers, and that technology really has helped us reduce, per megawatt, a forced draft cooling tower uses about 40% of the water that these once-through cooling facilities do use. So that's a great savings. And now we're looking at different sources of water rather than surface water or large water bodies around us. Our experience in reclaimed water started with a little bit of a toe in the water experience in Rhode Island. We had a small generator there that was proximate to a water treatment facility, and we were able to do the plumbing and gain the experience there. There's a big learning curve for both us as operators using a degraded water source that may or may not come in at the same quality all the time. And it's a learning curve for the operators of the water treatment facilities who never had a customer before, right? So it's a cultural adaptation to put those two complex processes together successfully. So we learned on that. We had a larger setup in Forney, Texas that really helped us move the needle, and so that we were in West County, Southern Boulevard in Palm Beach County, we have the state's largest natural gas facility, a little over 3,700 megawatts in 3 large facilities. Started that project using Floridan well water, pulling a lot of Floridan well water to supply the cooling water for that, and then looked at the adaptation to treated reclaimed water from the East Coast Regional Facility in Palm Beach County. We are now successfully doing that. It is not without its headaches, but we are still successfully 100% reclaimed, up to 22 million gallons per day in that facility. This is an aerial of that. The facility actually is located adjacent to Palm Beach Aggregates, with some mining pits out there. So when we've had a few hiccups recently with the ECR quality, we were able to draw from proximate reservoirs, but that is not the desired approach. One of the best examples in the United States of successful reclaim is the use of up to 90 million gallons per day in just southwest of Phoenix, Arizona. Arizona Public Service operates a large nuclear generation station called Palo Verde. They have a 35-mile, 72-inch pipeline that aggregates treated wastewater from multiple municipalities around the Phoenix metro area, delivers it down south, and you can see as it, in the lower right hand, that reclaimed water comes into a traditional water treatment facility. We have some finished water storage ponds that hold about 12 days worth of water as a kind of a surge volume after it's treated, and then it moves on through the system. About 65% evaporates directly during the production of the power, and then the balance of it goes to evaporation ponds. Very land intensive. You can see it takes a lot of footprint to do this. We have looked at reclaimed water for Turkey Point 6 and 7, which was just licensed by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission this spring. But because gas prices, 50% or 25% of what it was at the peak during 2004-2005 time period, we're not moving forward on Turkey Point 6 and 7 right now, which left Miami-Dade County asking, hey, got any other ideas for our reclaim? So we're looking at that, and obviously there's a lot of motivators down there. Saltwater intrusion, I'm sure the collective audience knows much more about saltwater intrusion than I do, but it's a fact of life with the porous geology that we have down south. The surficial aquifer is our freshwater aquifer supply for most of the water utilities in Miami-Dade County, so we're very cautious to make sure we look at what happens with that. And it's really intruded at the base of the aquifer, maybe 100 foot deep. It's intruded almost 6 to 7 miles inland in Miami-Dade County. That has been affected by a number of things, water canals, farming practices, and most recently a significant volume of development and the associated water withdrawals to feed that development. Don't know if this shows up very well for you, but this is on the left, 1955. The red line shows the saltwater intrusion. This was before Turkey Point was even thought of. And you can see on the lower side down there by Homestead, there's a little point. That's the Card Sound Canal that at that point in time did not have flood control gate on it. So salt water would come right up the canal. It was not a lined canal, so it would seep right down into the aquifer at that point. By '84, we had better management practices on those saltwater canals. We were able to beat that back a little bit. And then in 2011, we can see there's just slight movements inward, and a lot of that is being drawn by the drawdown shapes that you see represent the locations of Miami-Dade County's freshwater well systems, largely in the northwest corner of the developed area of Miami-Dade County. So it's a fact of life, and decisions that we make and practices that we do affect that. Excuse me. So Turkey Point, as I said, is the lower southeast corner of Miami-Dade County. On the right-hand lower side is an aerial view of the cooling canal system. It's a huge cooling canal pond, 5 miles long and 2 miles wide. So it's 20 square miles approximately. It's got a lot of its own ecosystem. About 20 to 25% of this canal system was covered with Rupia maritima seagrass that acted as a natural filtration. But over time, as with Florida Bay, this shallow saline water body rose up in salinity to the point that it stressed out those seagrasses. Those seagrasses died off, gave up their nutrients, And I have had a persistent algae bloom in the cooling canal system since sometime around 2013, 2014. So I've, as a nuclear engineer, learned a lot more about blue-green cyanobacteria than I thought I would ever get involved with. But let me tell you what we're doing about that. We also have a natural gas combined cycle unit at the site, and right now we have about 30 million gallons per day consumptive use permit withdrawal of Floridan aquifer water to provide water services to the facility. So we have an option perhaps to replace that. One of the things that happen with that high salinity water is that in a porous aquifer that's unlined, that high salinity water is heavier than the salt water below it. It moves down into the aquifer when it gets to the bottom, and there are some high flow zones in the strata of the aquifer, and it moves out. So it's actually moved out to the west about a mile from the boundary of the cooling canal system. We've installed a recovery well system that is drawing that back over time. That recovery well system pulls about 15 million gallons per day, and deep well injects that hypersaline water into the boulder zone. So that's been addressed by that, but we still need to address the salinity level in the cooling canal system surface water. Just a quick detour to, because it's colorful and it's kind of techy. This is continuous surface electromagnetic mapping software technology that we actually fly scan routes and can take slices of the aquifer all the way down to the base and determine the salinity and conductivity, standing in for salinity at different levels in the aquifer. And you can see that at the deeper horizon, you have that hypersaline water that's moved out a little bit to the west, and that's what we're pulling back with the recovery well system. There's other opportunities in Miami-Dade County. Of course, the county itself is looking at aging infrastructure and significant investment to upgrade that infrastructure. They've got an ocean outfall legislation requirement that has them turning back all their ocean outfalls by 2025. And as a part of that ocean outfall legislation, they have a target to find good secondary reuse for approximately 117 million gallons per day of treated wastewater. I think right now they're probably, a fraction of that, maybe 10% of that. So they're really looking for opportunities to reuse that water. Our facility has a water consumption ongoing, and we can find ways to utilize that down at Turkey Point. There's also environmental opportunities that we want to explore, and I'll talk about those real briefly. So the concept is that we would take right now up to 60 million gallons per day of treated wastewater, further treat that, and clean that to a point that we could use it, one, in the natural gas combined cycle unit, which is approximately 15 million gallons per day, and two, use a stream of that into the cooling canal system to help actively manage the salinity in the system. There's a rainfall deficit where the system evaporates more than is replaced by rainfall over time. This 30 million gallons per day would actively replace that gap and allow us to maintain a very low salinity in the cooling canal system, and therefore it wouldn't have that density motivator to move down into the aquifer. The other side benefit is we'd be able to move off the Floridan wells. Additionally, Miami-Dade County is looking at other opportunities to achieve that 117 million gallons per day. That gives them an opportunity to look at environmental wetland rehydration or other projects. We have a really good example of that near here at the Orlando Wetlands Park. If you haven't had an opportunity to see Orlando Wetlands Park, it's really something impressive, and it's been working for many years here. And I know it's a very popular location for families and bike riders and birders. So, around the cooling canal system, we have significant FPL land holdings, that could be used for treatment marshes, rehydration projects, or even aquifer storage. So all those things are being investigated right now. Our focus is really making sure we understand what the treatment technology needs to be. As many of you will know, we're arriving at a hybrid approach of some biological treatment up front, followed by membrane technology, because we need to look at both phosphorus and emerging pollutants that are in the treated wastewater stream. And then we're trying to figure out where is the best place to put it. South District Wastewater Treatment Facility, which would serve as the main supply, is about 9 miles north of us. And we could take advantage of siting locally up there, and that'd be a little easier for the waste stream generated by the membrane technology. So that's where we stand. I've intentionally ran through it quickly, so if you have questions that you'd like to talk with me about, I'll be around. I really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you today. Thank you very much.